Okay, we're going.
It's more as bad as it hurts to do this right now, but I'm gonna go in and put this out there right now so the world will get a grasp of what's to come. As you know, the day before Suge was shot in the Camps parking lot, I had a conversation with TC, who we all know as Terry Carter, who was a beloved friend of mine, and the truth is just the truth. A day before Suge was lured to the Tams, I myself was asked. They didn't know if he was going to come. And Terry and several other guys whose names I won't mention during this recording because they're street cats, tried to offer me money. One of the guys was an officer from Compton at one time, as everyone knows, who was Reggie Wright Jr., as well as Dr. Dre, offered me money to lure Suge with Terry Carter to the Towns parking lot because they wanted to kill him. So there was money placed on the table for Suge to be killed. Dr. Dre said that Suge was a thorn in his side and he wanted him out of there. I asked Terry, I said, Terry, I can't do that. You know me and Suge is like brothers. He said, look, man, I'm behind on my house note as well as my children's life insurance policy that I need to pay this life insurance. He said, please do this for me, that they're willing to get you a lawyer. He said Reggie had cash money that he was willing to take to my family to pay me to help lure Suge to that parking lot. So as much as it hurts to do, I don't want to go into all the names, but I want Reggie and all those to know, as well as Snoop is involved with this and other rappers who wanted Suge taken out. As I say, stay tuned. The truth is coming, and just fasten your seatbelts and strap up because it's coming.
Can't nobody, can't nobody, can't nobody, can't nobody. I've been lied on, talked about, and cheated. I've been scandalized, talked about, defeated. But can't nobody save me now but Jesus. Can't nobody save me but Jesus. Can't nobody, can't nobody, can't nobody save me but Jesus. Can't nobody, can't nobody, can't nobody save me but Jesus. But can't nobody save me but Jesus. Can't nobody, can't nobody, can't nobody, can't nobody. I was set up, tied up, and tangled up. Been on the lockdown, underground, and I'm praying now. Can anybody save me? Save me, but Jesus.
There's no bigger bad boy than Marion Suge Knight. Suge is short for Sugar Bear. He grew up in Compton. He was a bodyguard, a football player, and he founded Death Row Records. In 1996, there was an assassination attempt on Suge Knight. In the process, Tupac Shakur was shot. He lived for another 6 days, and according to his autopsy, he died from wounds he sustained the night Suge Knight was targeted. Later, Suge Knight would be blamed for the death of rapper Christopher Wallace. Witnesses in every case that testify take the oath that they are going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But do we hold investigators, judges, and prosecutors to the same standard?
It looks like he drove backwards and struck the victims and then went forward and struck them again as he left.
The video clearly shows that Suge Knight did not back up over Terry Carter.
It looks like he drove backwards and struck the victims and then went forward and struck them again as he left.
But this isn't the first time that the sheriffs have told lies about Suge Knight. In 1998, at the Universal Amphitheater, Snoop Doggy Dogg was arrested, and he told sheriffs that Suge Knight was behind the murder of Tupac. Sheriffs would leak that document in spite of knowing that Suge Knight was in the car the night Tupac was shot, and that there's no way that Suge Knight was behind the murder. Very few documents have been leaked in the Tupac murder. It's curious that the sheriffs would leak this document at the time the judge was hearing Suge Knight's appeal. And why do things always trace back to the sheriffs? Could it be that the Compton police, who were found to be corrupt, were absorbed into the Los Angeles County sheriffs, and therefore Suge is only attacked in places where the sheriffs will respond? They responded to the location at Tams, and not only would sheriffs respond to the One Oak nightclub where Suge Knight was shot 6 times, an off-duty sheriff is implicated in letting the shooters into the club that night and dropping them off at LAX the next morning. Could sheriffs be lying about Suge Knight to cover up their own misdeeds?
Human rights are in peril.
The deep rumblings that we hear today, the rumbling of discontent, is the thunder of disinherited masses rising from dungeons of oppression.
It's a crooked system, folks. It's a crooked system.
If Suge Knight is such a hardened criminal, can't they find any evidence to convict him? Turns out Suge Knight has been being investigated since the early 90s, and most of those investigations have gone absolutely nowhere. This investigation, they have had to manufacture evidence against him.
Danny, I need you to do Suge. I need you to do me a favor.
Okay. So he was asking him as a favor for Hall or Bill because he wasn't on the case. How did he come to you?
Pimping me out for Hall?
Pimping me out for Hall?
Yeah. Because I didn't, it's a high profile case, right? And me and Hall, like I said, I don't like Hall. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Hall says I'm egotistical, arrogant, you know what I mean? He just we don't like each other. We don't.
Trying to get information to set up Suge Knight.
No, I don't need information. They're going to give me the information. I'm going to do Suge. I don't need Suge to talk. I just need my presence next to Suge. Okay. I don't need Suge to say nothing. Okay. He made me an agent of the state in the court, right? Crazy shit. It was Brandenburg first. Brandenburg says, I want you to do me a favor, right? Work with Hall and do Suge, right? At the time, Hall wasn't even on the case. Hall promoted to lieutenant, came to the county jail. Richard was the IO in the case. So I started working with Hall.
When you say Richard, you mean Richard Biddle?
Yeah.
Okay.
I started working with Hall and Biddle, right? Well, I don't like Biddle. I don't like him, right? So I said, don't bring him around me again, right? Mm-hmm. So I was dealing with Hall. Hall was trying to build a scenario on Suge where Suge's point of defense is going to be self-defense. In the beginning, in the murder book, there was 2 witnesses. One of her name is her address is out of Whittier. She was present when all that happened. She said that one of the people involved had something that resembled a gun. That particular piece of evidence in the murder book never got turned over to Cindy, so they couldn't make it part of the discovery where the defense couldn't get it.
This was a dirty trick. These are dirty tricksters.
My wife's nephew, his name is Devin Gonzalez, he caught an attempted murder case in Palmdale, Lancaster. They tried to give him 70 to life. Hall told me that if I testify against Suge Knight and help Suge Knight, they would get the kid out of jail or cut him a deal, right?
What's his name again?
Devin Gonzalez. Of course, I told Hall, I got you, right? They went, dropped all the charges and gave him 6 years. Right now, in division in Lancaster Court, Catherine Blanchard being the judge. Hall did that because he thinks I'm doing shit.
They kicked him?
Yeah, 7 to life. Look it up on the internet. So, Devin Gonzalez, I got his bookie number.
They give him 7 years?
He ever faced a 7 to life. They dropped everything down, right, and he got 6 years.
And so they tried to get an inmate to offer false, trumped-up testimony on Suge Knight. Another inmate that was asked to testify against Suge Knight is Waymond Anderson, a.k.a. Suave. We know him as the singer in the late 80s that did the remake of My Girl. That song climbed to number 22 on the national charts and climbed to number 1 on the R&B charts. Here's what Suave had to say about Suge Knight.
The following audio recording is the sole property of my production company, Suave First Production, and any use of this audio recording without having my written consent or the purchase thereof this audio recording from me, Suave, for its use in any capacity will be in direct violation of my copyright of this audio recording. Moreover, this audio recording in its entirety was assembled over several 15-minute collect phone calls that I made from prison to someone with the knowledge of utilizing advances that have been made in today's recording technology to omit the constant reminder from being heard of my calls being placed from a correctional institution.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It's a crooked system, folks. It's a crooked system.
This is stuff people can check on their own. So my point and why I'm doing this today is to clear my name of people saying I said this or I said that. When I'm a man, I stand up and use the bathroom when I use the bathroom. I'm not hiding from nobody, and I'm just tired of all the lies. I got intertwined with Suge Knight in about 2000. It could be late 1999. I received a visit at SAT-F, which is Corcoran 2 State Prison in Fresno, California, from special agents that flew out from New York. They entered into the visiting room at the prison. I did not know what they were there to see me for, and it was through this agent named Todd Holliday that I earned a cell phone in my name of Waymond Anderson was found inside of Death Row Records. On the night of the murder of Christopher Wallace, I'm told by the agent that the cell phone in my name that they found inside of Death Row Records, when they served a search warrant on his record label, made phone calls on March the 9th, 1997, near the Peterson Museum. During the interview, they did not tape it. They had what I would call a yellow legal pad with them, and they were using the legal pad to write down information. And they basically told me that if I was to confirm that Marion Suge Knight had something to do with the murder of Christopher Wallace, that they would walk me out of prison. And I just looked at them. I wasn't going to lie on Suge, because I had been lied on, and I know exactly what that feels like.
With the murder.
Standard protocol is to charge Cleabone Sloan with a felony murder instead of the victim, Suge Knight. Here you can see Cleabone Sloan and others attacking Suge, trying to grab his keys, trying to grab the gear shift. Instead, Cleabone Sloan is granted immunity.
This is the gruesome surveillance video of Suge Knight running down 2 men with his pickup truck, killing one of them.
The video is everything. The video in this case is the whole story.
TMZ broke the story in January. Suge goes to a shoot for the NWA movie, and there was some sort of altercation.
He got kicked out. He says he got a call
from his friend Terry inviting him to a sit-down at this burger joint. Suge pulls in and is instantly confronted by this man, Cleabone Sloan.
Bone charges his truck.
You can tell there's a fight going on because the truck is shaking.
And you can see Bone is doing something.
Terry comes over, stands near Bone. Suge throws the truck in reverse, knocks Bone to the ground. Seconds later, he guns it, running over Bone and Terry.
Running him over in a violent way.
Terry died from his injuries. Bone survived.
The question is, was he trying to kill these people?
Well, Suge could have just driven down the street, but instead cuts right. Why?
Suge has said that Bone had a gun, and there were others that had a gun, and that if he drove down the road, that they might shoot him and kill him.
Police say there are no guns in the video, but watch Bone. A guy comes up, takes something from him, and puts it in his waistband.
I think it's a probability that it's a gun.
Let's enhance the video. Okay, that didn't help. But if Suge can prove he was acting in self-defense, this may not be murder.
Sloan tells the police that no one took anything from my hand. So I didn't have anything for anyone to take. We have the video or the pictures showing that the radio and his cell phone were always inside his car. They now changed the story from saying the cell phone was ran over and I never had a radio, because on the video you can see the black object, oblong object being taken from his hand or his side. That's the gun. He's now saying, well, it's not really a gun, it's the radio. And the reason he's saying that is because he doesn't have any other explanation for what was taken. And his offer is, this is their case. Someone planted that in my car. That's the case now. They're saying I didn't have a gun and someone planted my radio in my car next to my cell phone, even though we have the surveillance video that shows no one planted anything in the car. That's their case now.
Cops are saying it's clear, what was taken from Bone Sloan wasn't a gun, That's what they're saying.
Right.
What are your thoughts on this?
I guess anyone can have their own opinion, but when's the last time you saw someone reach down and pull something out of the back of a waistband that just happens to be a square object and then slide it in the back of their waistband?
Yeah, and then not to be seen again.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also the call, I don't know if it's come out, there's a call when Carter's family calls the police department asking, where's my father's gun? So, it's clearly a gun. I think it's clearly a gun.
Now, does this video that we published, does this exonerate Suge?
I think it does.
Hey, 20 years ago, you were the lead detective on the Biggie Small case, right? I'm a journalist. Why is this case so important to you?
A murder like that only goes unsolved if the police don't want to solve it.
I've seen the murder book. You have any suspects?
20 plus years and not one arrest. Are you guys hearing Tupac shooters were hired by Biggie's entourage?
Biggie didn't have Tupac killed.
The facts point to something more here.
If we could prove a connection between Cop and Biggie's murder, it would not only break the LAPD.
It would ruin the city.
Police! My faction don't like asking questions, strictly testing. As I lead my competition,
why did you redact LAPD's connection with Death Row Records?
I cannot comment on an open investigation.
As long as it's an ongoing investigation, that evidence stays locked away in the dark.
We are a matchstick away from blood-stained streets every day.
Everybody just on the ground now!
You have no idea what the LAPD is capable of.
We are distancing ourselves from the story. I got what I need. What I do?
Out of the vehicle now! Everybody!
Who shot Biggie Smalls?
There was only one way this was going to end.
He took a bullet in the head. A lot of people would say, because, there was a theory going around that he had Tupac killed so he wouldn't leave death row. But a lot of people would say, how are you going to get that bullet in your head?
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's really preposterous. Russell's original theory was that Suge was behind this, because what Russell couldn't separate in his mind was that Death Row Records and Suge Knight were separate entities. All of the evidence points towards Death Row Records. None of the evidence points towards Suge. But because Suge was the sole shareholder in Death Row, when you said Death Row, you were talking about Suge Knight. And so for that reason, Russell had thought, that all of this evidence pointed to an inside job with Death Row Records, and he blamed Suge for it. And he was very vocal about that. And he was going to the sheriffs to apologize to Suge Knight and tell the investigators that they have this case against Suge that's crumbling, and to abandon that case and get on board with solving the two biggest mysteries in rock and roll history, or in music history.
So Russell Poole was going to apologize to Suge Knight?
100%.
Wow. So he really felt bad about originally accusing Suge then. He
felt very bad. As he and I were working on Chaos Merchants, we handed a copy of Tupac 187 to the DA's office, and they just weren't feeling it. Our contact at the DA's office just wasn't feeling it. He goes, I get it, but and so we redoubled our efforts to try and drill down deeper, and Russell insisted that every single fact be footnoted. So if you read Chaos Merchants, every single fact has a footnote as to where it comes from. And so you can see everything lines up perfect with this. And it's not just conjecture, it is actually supported by documents. It's supported by witness testimony. It's supported by, interviews that people have done since then to give us little clues. And when Russell saw all of this laid out, he felt horrible about things he'd said about Suge. And he realized that Suge was a victim that night. Suge was not the perpetrator of the crime. I set up a meeting for him to go meet with the sheriff's investigators because we actually had traction with the DA's office. They were interested in possibly reopening the cases. They needed a homicide investigator from inside of LAPD or the sheriffs to work with them to try and reopen the cases. And I knew Jim McDonnell, and so did Russell. And so I cornered Jim McDonnell at a meeting. He was speaking at an alumni conference that I happen to be an alumni of. And so I cornered him and said, "Hey, Jim, I need a homicide investigator." He said, "Call my office, we'll set it up." And that's how the meeting happened. And Russell went to this meeting, and just before the meeting, maybe 3 or 4 days before, Russell had learned that there was an off-duty sheriff that had let the shooters into the club at One Oak the night Suge Knight was shot, and that same off-duty sheriff drove the shooters to the airport the next day. And so the day before Russell's meeting with the sheriffs, the investigator calls him and says, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" And he mentions this. The investigator confirms that it's true and says, "How do you know this?" And is just unhinged by the fact that he knew this. And I talked to Russell that night and said, "Maybe you shouldn't go to this meeting." And he said, "No, I want to do it. I love Jim. I want to support Jim McDonnell." And so I talked to him at 9 o'clock in the morning. He was on his way to the meeting, and he was stuck in traffic. He said, "No problem. I'm going to make my meeting, though. I don't have to be there till 10. He was in Diamond Bar, and he gets to the meeting. Evidently, 4 investigators from the Suge Knight case show up at the meeting, and he had no idea they were going to be there. And Russell has a heart attack in that meeting talking about sheriff corruption with the sheriffs, and he dies in the meeting.
In the meeting. Wow.
In the meeting. He passes away, has a massive heart attack, dies before he hits the floor, and it's impossible to resuscitate him. And you would think of all the places to have a heart attack, the sheriff's department at headquarters has to be one of the safest. You got all kinds of people there that are trained in CPR. You know, you're going to be able to get an ambulance there pretty quick. You're going to be able to get to a hospital. It's probably a pretty safe place to have a heart attack. And for some reason, Russell passes away there.
And that's and when he was there was three guys that were from the Suge Knight investigation.
Yeah, there were 4 guys that showed up from the Suge
guys.
Knight. My understanding is there were a total of 5 people. Now, I asked Jim McDonnell and the other investigator who the people were, and they stonewalled me. They said they would not reveal the names. And I thought that was a little bit weird.
Yeah, so
you know,
he dies in this mysterious meeting. Almost sounds like I'm not trying to make fun of your friend, but it almost sounds like an X-Files case. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like you can't find out the identity of these 4 people that were there, and he just he just happens to die right there in the meeting.
Hard work that was supposedly done is going to probably all go down the drain.
Russell Poole was taken off this investigation. I have been taken off 3 cases. And I even got a confession from an inmate inside the Nevada prison on a bomb extortion case. I got a confession. And they took me off the case. Didn't want to hear about this case anymore. Why? Because I was getting too close. I was getting too close to the actual individuals that were responsible for this. And it leads right up to the Upper Police Administration and the Clark County District Attorney. When you got that kind of power, where nobody can question you or nobody has the authority to question you, you can do anything you want to. You can manufacture and make anybody disappear or go to prison. So when you ask me about Tupac, that's easy. That's easy. And there was some money there. There is some money. And unfortunately, my beloved police department, the upper administration, they operate on money. Money and greed and avarice. It's very disappointing. Narcotics is a very dirty, dirty business. I've only recently become aware of a narcotics trafficking scheme that's been going on since the mid-90s, whereby the LVMPD, the LAPD, and the LASD are all complicit. They're all involved in it. It emanates out of Compton, California. Okay. Now, again, I'm just the messenger. And how many people know this? I mean, I'm definitely not right up there in the food chain. I'm way down here, and I learn about this. It's because everybody else has got a gag order on them, and they're afraid to talk about it.
There was only one way this was going to end.
Circumstances in his case were far more tragic because he was killed in the line of duty.
At the conclusion of that meeting, he grabbed his chest and he passed away.
Because he was killed in the line of duty